So I want to understand, both of you are marketing experts. You have seen the project launches. You've been part of the projects. When projects are launched and stuck, I've noticed rebranding, recommunication, or different strategy all come together in place to make that project sell, right? So I want to understand, maybe in your perspective, or you have gone through certain challenge, how do you make sure that the project which got stuck, how it needs to have a different new communication or rebranding done? Because it should not dissociate with the fact that what you communicated before to the consumers, and now if you're launching it again as a different launch, how do you make sure? I want to understand how the communication, or how does the strategy works there when a product is launched and you have to launch it again because there was a challenge in earlier space, but how to go about it?
So, products or brands go through repositioning exercises across industries. Real estate is not alone. What you thought is relevant, or what is the problem that you thought at a sizable level you will be able to solve for the consumer, when that doesn't happen, you generally end up not meeting your business goals, right? Typically, if I look at a life cycle of a project, of a real estate project, you will go through a pre-launch, a launch, then you will have 2 to 3 years of sustenance, and then you will enter the year just getting delivery ready. Then you will reach a stage of being OC ready, then you will get your OC, and then. So for a successful real estate project, what we look at is that before OC comes, you should be 95%, right? If that is the metric, and then if you look at for a successful pre-launch and launch, if you want to sell, say, 30 to 40% of the volume, because that's where you have the maximum ability to drive velocity of sales, right? Why? Because consumer has the maximum choice of inventory. As a buyer, what are my incentives to buy at, say, a pre-launch or a launch? The full choice of inventory. I have hopefully a smart price point which allows me to enter the project, and I see value in doing that. When do you become unsuccessful in achieving this? Is either your product specking that you have done is not meeting the need of the customer, or you overestimated in terms of how many people would be looking at this as a product proposition. So you go wrong sometimes. Sometimes you overbuild, sometimes you undersize. Like today, if I were to look at it, majority of the projects where any developer has a problem is essentially to sell small. Most products Mumbai today challenge is to sell small and sell smaller apartments or sell entry-level apartments. Because majority of the buoyancy in demand is essentially for larger spaces, like most categories. If you look at automobile as a category, essentially the challenge is in the entry-level hatchbacks, but your premium sedans and SUVs are flying off the shelves. So when you look at a repositioning exercise, there has to be a change in the product. If you haven't say suppose it's a multi-tower development, you have launched with the first tower, you may make product specking changes in the second one. Whether it is resizing apartments, or whether design changes are there, or even in terms of the number of floors or the density that you are thinking of. So all this comes from being very close to the ground, and that's the role marketing plays very strong.
Right.
It is about understanding what is the actual consumer feedback of either success or failure. Then bring that to the table in the management decision making, because these have long-term ramifications of changes, right? It has hundreds, thousands of crores that are at stake, right? And companies' cash flows are dependent on this, because you plan your cash flows for projects to come at a certain interval. So when that decision making happens, then you pick up what is the key change that you have done in this and what it means for the consumer. To give a very, I would say, generic example, suppose you have launched a project without balconies or decks, and you realize the majority of the feedback that is coming because your projects are, room sizes are fine, location is fine, but we are looking for apartments with decks. Right. So if that's what you have changed in the design, then that is what you have to anchor your communication next time when you go ahead with that. Because essentially, your core remains the same. People are buying, say, a Kalpataru home, which has certain parameters attached with it for the last 55 years. they haven't changed. There was a fundamental disconnect maybe in the product that you have taken to the market first time. There are not many buyers for that category, or you overestimated or underestimated a price point or a demand, which then you would go make that change and go back and communicate that very, very clearly across as a 360 across touch points. So that the consumer can come to your point of sale and can see the difference. Because the buying is a long cycle, right? So the fastest somebody buys is maybe 6 months, right? Never seen anything less than that. There are periods where people have been actively searching for maybe 18 to 24 months as well also before actually deciding what to buy. So people take that time, and if they see that there is a genuine change which has happened and the pain point has got resolved, we do get a lot of customers who would have visited us in the past come back and actually pick up their phone. So I think that's the role, that being understanding that what was the pain point for not consuming the same, and then taking it to the market across all touch points is what then guarantees the success of that repositioning or the relaunch exercise.
Have you faced such challenge where the product is ready, you can't make change to the product, but now how to rebrand it again?
I would say rarely. I think that goes to show the strength of the product development and the design process and the consumer understanding of Kalpataru, which has been honed for so many years, being very, very close, being realistic. That ability to decipher between what's the consumer behavior, what's the short-term trend, and that ability to hold on to that. I think that's the strength that the organization has displayed. Yes, there have been challenges where I would say a certain kind of product has been a slow mover in the entire stack of products. Then you have to look at, because the market has different kinds of.
Then how do you go about it?
It is essentially, when you look at, is that who does it appeal to, who does it solve a purpose, right? Not all of us are extremely discerning or finicky about everything that we consume. There are people who would be maybe willing to make a compromise in a way, right? So they're where, or I will not say compromise, maybe other factors appeal to them more than what you are thinking appeals. So I think that's where reorienting your targeting also becomes important, but not at the cost of value. Because please understand that for trying to solve a 10% problem or a 15% problem, you're not going to destroy the 90% or the 85% of the product. I think when you go into that trap of destroying value, then things start falling down, which is a very, very difficult path to come back from, because it has ramifications on your future work. Because like Rakesh was saying, the biggest testimonial is somebody who has actually put money on the table and bought your product in the past and enjoy it, right? Anybody can give you an opinion, influence you, but finally, if it is such a high involvement category where such high stakes are involved, you would listen to somebody who has spent his or her hard-earned money in buying that product and is actually satisfied using that product. So I think that's why these decisions have much more longer term implications, and it's not just about getting a quick sale in that quarter and moving out, because people will remember what happened.
True. So have you faced such challenge, like where the product is being slow moving or the product is launched and the turnaround the way you expected has not been there?
It happens, right? So in my 5 years in Rustomjee, I have seen certain projects. Somehow, out of those 5 years, that financial year 2019-20 was a slow period in itself for real estate industry, where there was hardly any growth in the industry itself. And 2021 also was a flat year, thanks to stupendous sales in H2 of 2021 COVID period, where first half was absolutely zero. Now, it happens in certain life cycle of the project. At times it may happen that the sales may be little low as compared to what we expected. But then, at the topic of branding, okay, so I would just come back, is that I think, whenever things don't go right, and not just in real estate, even in the other industries also where I have worked, I would say the fundamentals are, go back to the basics. Just see what's working, what's not working. Just understand, what the value proposition that we started with, what is the promise that we were thinking we are making to the customer. Then what is it that we are communicating? And then what is it that the consumer is understanding? So very, very often I have seen, Kritika, is that, there is a difference. You create an X combination, but your communication goes about Y, and your sales team communicates Z to the customers. It is when you actually get the entire pieces right, when you start communicating the benefit that you came up with originally, and when you also align on your sourcing team to communicate what you set out for, then, the things start getting corrected in itself. So I would just like to break it also into two parts. So in the projects, no issues about branding and all. So wherever the sales go down of a particular inventory, let us say, we've come up with 3 or 4 kinds of typologies or sizes in a particular product, and we feel that a particular size is not selling. Then very, very often when we go back to the basics, we find that the communication is still happening on the other sizes, or the sales team is still, talking to the channel partners about the other sizes. Then you correct everything, and then you start communicating the benefit of a particular product or inventory that you want to see, and things sort of. This is about point number 1. The point number 2, I'm just going back to your original question about branding or rebranding activity. Mostly for real estate, for all the companies, I would say, in branding, there are 2 kind of approaches that you adopt. One is a house of brand approach, and the second is the branded house approach that you adopt. A house of brand is something like, maybe I can give an example of HUL or Unilever, where they've got different brands. They've got Close Up, they've got Lux, they've got Surf, they've got so many products, right? But then Unilever is an industrial entity, right? Is the overall owner of all the brands. In case of real estate, in case of Rustomjee, our branding activity is such is that Rustomjee is the main brand, right? Is the mother brand. And then with that, whether it is Rustomjee Parishram Palehil or Rustomjee Panorama Palehil or Rustomjee Crown Prabha Devi, so Rustomjee is the promise to the customer. It's a branded house communication that we are doing. Even when we acquired a project in Prabha, it was being sold by another builder. We acquired it in 2018-19. And, we also evaluated whether we should change Crown name to something else. But we decided that, our Rustomjee brand name, because that is where we've been, that is what we've been communicating to the customer. Customer has got trust with that. So just bringing Rustomjee and then Crown and then Prabha Devi is a fair enough promise for the customer. Right? So I think rebranding, I would say, I would not like to encourage it. Personally, as a marketeer, at times in a difficult situation, one may need to do that. But I think going back to basics, just looking at if our planning was right, and if we get the execution also matching with the planning, I think many a time the situations actually don't go to the level of doing the rebrand.
So during the pandemic, we saw a new trend where mandate business was happening a lot, where the developers were quite mesmerized by the team because they were talking about how talented the team is coming from IMIT, and they could handle from the creative side, from coming up with the communication part till the end while selling. So they could give it to everything to the mandate business guys. Pandemic, 2 years, we saw that trend happening. Now post-pandemic, it's a bit less. But do you see mandate business will become one of the major or tool that developers will use, and internal teams like marketing in those brands will go smaller?
So I think it's a beautiful concept, right? All the mandate partners who are there, with all respect to them, I think they are really powerhouses. They are a group of very, very talented people who know real estate. Now for Rustomjee, we've actually not used much of mandate partners in most of our launches. We've not used them. Except that in the H2 of previous financial year, for some of our existing projects, we had the tie-up and it was productive. I think, so my general view about having mandate partners is, the value that they bring on the table. Like you've said, they've got talent. They can stitch together the sales and marketing piece. They can put together the strategy. And then obviously there is a cost to that. right? You outsource a particular job and then you pay certain cost for that. In my view, in my experience, which is across various industries, one thing what I feel is that you can outsource anything, but you can't outsource your customer and your brand. Those are integral part of the organization. I mean, that part cannot be outsourced. You can outsource an activity, you can outsource a function, or you can outsource a process. What I have learned working with different industries, different Indian and multinational organizations, is that, outsourcing your brand and your customer side is something different. That's the basic foundation of the organization. This is one point. The second point is also the organization game plan, the organization business plan. So let us say, what is the percentage cost of sales and marketing manpower to the turnover that you do? If let us say, just for example, if I can just tell you ballpark, so let us say you pay X percentage to the mandate partner. And if you feel that your cost of having an internal sales and marketing machinery is X minus certain percentages. So then, one has to decide whether to outsource or to build their capability internally.
Right.
So for Rustomjee as an organization, we've got large plans and, we've been growing really well in the last 3-4 years. And we've got huge growth plan, all our acquisitions. We've done close to 15 acquisitions in the last 2 years. The next 2-3 years are going to see about 5 to 7 launches happening every year. The way we've got our business plans, we would like to build our internal processes, which are extremely strong. We would like to, in fact, in the last 5 years, also we built very robust sales and marketing machinery. As I was telling you, in our sales and marketing organogram, we've got a full-fledged strategy team, which takes care of market assessment, evaluation, developing project-wise sales and marketing strategy, pricing, communication plan. Then in our marketing team, we've got a separate brand and communication team. Then we've got marketing operations team. We've got, a complete digital marketing team separately. Also, PR and events is another team that we have. Similarly, in sales, we've got very elaborate, we've got good structure. So today, we've got very strong sales and marketing team that we've created. And what we feel is, what I like to say internally to my board of directors, is that we've created the head, heart, and brain of the sales and marketing machinery. If at times, suppose we get 5 projects in 6 months' time that we have to launch, and if we need to get, maybe, more bodies or more hands and legs, that we need to get in, probably, there would be a way to get that. So, in my opinion, all due credit, I think, certain organizations who may not be able to build their capability internally of sales and marketing machinery, this entire, going through that grind of bringing in people, working with them, building careers for them, building career aspirations for them. Talent management and development is a different thing, right? Many organizations may not be aware of that. Many organizations may not be willing to actually go through that grind of building that structure to provide meaningful career to the people. Then I think it is better to outsource, right? But if an organization believes in developing an organization which has to be an excellent place for the employees, which is a professional organization where you can meet individuals' aspirations and expectations, you can do talent management and development, you can do training programs for people, and still you feel that, it is better here because you don't want to outsource your customers and brand, right? I wouldn't like to do it. As a head of sales, marketing, CRM, and business strategy for Rustomjee, I would preferably keep the brand and customers too. And then I would like to develop a strategic machinery inside the organization. And then, use them strategically as an analyst, use them tactically as an analyst. That is what my approach on mandate partners is.